talk about what it means to be an entrepreneur, Tony. I think that's a very good topic for you and I to dive into for setting up shop. Given we are both entrepreneurs, and I think we've had ambitions to grow a business as entrepreneurs and try things that are a bit different and see where we go. So, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur to you?
Um, that's a really good question. Because I think for a lot of people, they hear that term but don't really understand what it is.
Mhm.
I've heard people say, but I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm a business owner. And it's because I think they think entrepreneurs are someone who keeps changing businesses, someone who's constantly evolving. Whereas some people have got a set idea of where the business wants to go and they just keep it as that, so they don't really class themselves it. I think being an entrepreneur gives you the freedom to actually choose what you want to do with the business and with your life. Because I think that's where people sometimes for me get mixed up is that they look at two separate things. But the entrepreneurship, to do that, the whole idea about becoming your own boss, having that freedom, is to give you financial freedom and time freedom to do the things you really want to do. And that's what an entrepreneur means to me.
Yeah, and I think we are also looking at entrepreneurs can be defined under one name or they can be defined under multiple names. It's quite a flexible way of looking at the way that you're in business and you're looking at opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe the word evolving because it's not being stuck to one simple thing. It is always looking at where can we go next? Where
Yeah.
can we take the business next? And yeah, a lot of people will get the business to a certain point and might decide either, yeah, I can't really take this anywhere else, but I've got this great idea that I can now do. That gives them the opportunity to do that. It gives them that opportunity to have that vision of saying, right, maybe I've took this business as far as I can go, but maybe one idea they've got is to sell that to someone else who maybe could take that idea further than they can, and then they can concentrate what they're good at is setting something else up. And I think that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I've over the last few years, so sort of I've grown as a business owner and learned along a lot the way. And, foundationally, I think you know where things haven't gone right and you try to work out what to do
Hmm.
with that. Um, but what I found is I've almost got four different businesses under my banner essentially. So, and that's been an evolution of, I guess, understanding that it's okay to change and to work out if something
Hmm.
doesn't fit under your current umbrella, that you can create something else. And, no one's going to judge you for, taking a different direction. I think there's a lot of concern about, well, this is what I say I do. So if I do this, people are going to judge me, about doing something different. I guess it's about that flexibility of looking at, will this make sense to someone if they look at my business? If it doesn't, where should it fit?
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think I struggled with that a little while for, if I do something else, does it mean that I failed in this first thing because I have now redirected my attention or not? And last year I realized that it makes sense to be more diversified
Hmm.
because it makes sense to people who look at it and go, oh, that's something completely different. It's branded differently. It's got a different meaning behind it. It's still me, but it just doesn't fit under one of the elements that I'm focusing on. So I kind of feel like people sometimes don't step out because they're worried about how people perceive that shift.
Yeah, and I think right that you hear that a lot from coaches that I've met and said, "Oh, well, you can't do this because that will dilute the message from this that you're doing." But no, because whatever message you put out there, the right people will be attracted to that if you use the right language. So I'm similar to you. I've got four different things on the go at the moment that are all part of the same business. They're all Change Your Mind Limited, but they're all separate parts of that. And it's all because my interest doesn't have to be fixed on one simple thing. I love what I do under Change Your Mind Limited, but I love what I do with Setting Up Sharp.
Mm.
But I also love mentoring more. And with Change Your Mind Limited, it wasn't something that I was doing so much of that. So a separate part. It's still the same business. I just shortened the name to CYML. And people say, oh, it's a new business you've got. But if you actually look at it, CYML is just Change Your Mind Limited with the abbreviation. But
Yeah.
that's the mentoring side. And I think that's the bit that's great is having this that freedom to choose that's the way you want to go at that time. But it's also good having that variety that it keeps you on your toes all the time. It keeps you looking for something more. And I think that's the great thing about entrepreneurship is you're always looking for that next step, that next stage. What's the next thing? Whereas if you were in a job with someone else, they define where your boundaries are. But as an entrepreneur, you define your own boundaries. So the
Mm.
only boundaries you have are the limitations you make for yourself.
Yeah, there's a great example of this. And big companies do this a lot. It may not look like it, but it is. So Guinness is a great example. So Guinness brews beer. But the Guinness World Records was set up as
Mm.
as another marketing tactic, and it's defined by its own different elements. Like it was still a Guinness idea, but it has completely taken on its own identity. And I think that's where you can look at diversifying what you're doing and be able to show a different side of you because that's what's of interest, or it's a way of showing people a different direction that you can go. And I think there's sometimes fear. I mean, Virgin, we talk about Virgin a lot in a lot of our setting up shop stuff. You know, Richard Branson diversified a lot. He was, could we call him a serial entrepreneur? Because he seemed to have ideas everywhere. He had the money and investment and the and curiosity to try something different. Not all of them worked, some of them worked. And I think that's where entrepreneurship is taking a risk, taking a chance, and seeing where it could go. Because I
Mm.
think you'd be amazed at what different doors open up by trying something that is outside of the scope that you originally start with.
Yeah, and I think you've been a perfect word for there, but most entrepreneurs are they're curious.
Mm,
What happens if I do this? What happens if I try that? Whereas people who don't have that same mentality, they've got the opposite. What if it goes wrong?
mm,
What if I try this and people don't like it? What if people don't want to buy? Then that's fine, but you learn from that. You mentioned Richard Branson, and I use this a lot as an example because I think he's fantastic. His vision, what he had for what he set up and the things now, and you're right, it's like you said, the Guinness, but when you look at Guinness World Records and you ask people about that, I wonder how many people actually could associate that with Guinness the beer. They think it's two separate things. Even though it's got the same word in the front, they don't really associate it with it. And I think he did one thing, it was great, although he's diversified with the Virgin Hotels, they've got the cruises, everything else that he's got, he still has the word Virgin in them all, but
mm.
they're all different directions. So he's kept a continuity there of the Virgin. People know it's that because they know that, wait a minute, I'm getting something, I know what I'm getting here, I
Mm.
know that it's established. But yet he diversifies to all these different directions. And you're right, he said things that don't work. And the one I normally use example is cola. Virgin Cola just did not work, but you could not challenge the brand of Coca Cola with that. It was never going to work. Plus, if you were going to challenge it, don't copy the same colours. That was never going to work. I don't know whoever came up with that. I don't really understand why they thought that could happen. We'll
Yeah,
change all that and we'll even keep it the same colours as them and hope it works.
yeah,
No. But he learned from those mistakes and he goes, and that's what's fantastic is the ability to do that. I call it bounce back ability, and it's not my word, it's a great word. But it was so I got a footballer called Ian Dowie that set this word up because it's like onomatopoeia. It means it just is like you can imagine that happening. And that's like an serial entrepreneur. They'll bounce back from anything and
yeah,
go to the next one. You
yeah.
just keep doing that, and that's what's great about it.
And I think there's also that element that people will try to crush your dreams. It happens all the time. We talk about positives and the negatives in this environment, but there'll be always people that will be telling you, "Don't do it. This is a bad idea." And I think that's where, as entrepreneurs, we push past those doubts by others, because if you don't try it, you'll never know if it could work or not.
Mm.
And I think that's where being an entrepreneur also means that you have to have a pretty thick skin, I think. This is something I've really struggled with developing that mentality of don't listen to anyone else. If I want to try it, it's up to me to make that decision and then
Mm.
see how it goes. That curiosity, I think, really drives entrepreneurs forward. And the amount of times you hear about, oh yeah, they failed, but one idea could work out of however many you try. And I mean, it all happens to us. We kind of go, oh, that didn't work. What's next? Where do you go next? Keep thinking to the future rather than dwelling on the past. And I think great entrepreneurs, you see them all the time, even celebrities that are entrepreneurs because they've diversified from,
Mm.
say, a musician that is, I'm a musician, and then they've gone into fashion, shoes, brands. They've gone into hotels, restaurants. That diversity is a part of that entrepreneur spirit, and it happens in a lot of different environments. It's not just for business owners, but I think there's a lot we can learn by others who have gone, I'm going to try it. I'm going to take a chance and see where it ends up, because you never know where it could lead.
And that's the one difference with an entrepreneur. When you mentioned that people always try and pull you down, but I think especially in the UK, 'cause I think we like building people up, but just to knock them back down again. But an entrepreneur will say, okay, you're right, they push past that, but they've got that one saying all the time in their heads, is that failures are only steps on the way to success. That's a great way of describing entrepreneurship.